Jake Morrison pressed his face against the small porthole of the transport vessel, watching the stars blur past in streaks of white light. 3 days ago, he had been just another maintenance worker on Kepler Station, fixing broken air recyclers and patching hull breaches. Now he was unemployed, broke, and hitching a ride on a cargo hauler to wherever his credits could take him. The transport ship Lucky Strike wasn't much to look at. A beat-up cargo vessel with mismatched hull plates and engines that wheezed like an old man climbing stairs. But it was cheap passage, and Captain Torres had been willing to take human currency without asking too many questions. "First time off-world?" asked Zara Chen, the ship's engineer, sliding into the seat across from him in the small passenger compartment. She was one of only 5 humans aboard, the rest being a mix of alien traders and travelers. "Second," Jake replied, not taking his eyes off the hypnotic dance of stars. "First time was when I came to Kepler Station 5 years ago. Thought I'd found my place in the universe, you know?" Turned out the universe had other plans. Zara nodded sympathetically.
"Company downsizing?"
"Budget cuts. Apparently, human engineers cost too much compared to the new automated systems."
Jake finally turned away from the porthole, managing a bitter smile. 20 years of experience and I get replaced by a machine that can't even tell the difference between a coolant leak and condensation. The conversation was interrupted by a sudden lurching sensation that sent both humans sliding across their seats. Emergency lights began flashing red throughout the compartment, and the ship's intercom crackled to life. "All passengers remain calm," came Captain Torres's voice, tight with barely controlled panic. "We are experiencing a minor technical difficulty. Please stay in your seats and await further instructions." Through the porthole, Jake could see another ship approaching fast, a sleek, predatory vessel painted in blacks and dark reds. Weapon ports glowed with ominous energy, and scanner arrays swept over the Lucky Strike, like searching eyes. "Pirates," whispered Zara, her face going pale. The raider ship latched onto their hull with magnetic clamps that rang through the metal like funeral bells. Within minutes, the transport's main airlock was breached, and armored figures began pouring into the corridors. Jake caught glimpses of them through the passenger compartment's reinforced windows. Tall, insectoid creatures with 4 arms each ending in wicked claws, their chitinous armor gleaming under the emergency lights. "Kithrak raiders," said an alien passenger, a blue-skinned Talarian merchant who was trembling behind his seat. "They take prisoners for the slave markets on Nexus Prime. We are all dead." The compartment door exploded inward in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. 3 Kithrak warriors stepped through, their compound eyes scanning the terrified passengers like farmers appraising livestock. The lead raider spoke in a series of clicks and hisses, and a translation device on his armor converted the sounds into galactic standard. "All sentients will comply. Resistance results in immediate termination. Move to designated holding areas." Jake found himself shoved along with the other passengers through corridors now filled with smoke and the acrid smell of burned circuits. Bodies of crew members lay sprawled in doorways, some human, some alien, all dead. The pirates had taken the ship with brutal efficiency. The holding area turned out to be the cargo bay, where the surviving passengers and crew were forced to their knees in neat rows. Jake counted maybe 30 survivors out of what had been nearly 60 beings aboard the transport. Captain Torres was among the dead. Jake had seen his body near the bridge. The Kithrak leader, distinguished by additional scars on his carapace and a collection of what looked like small bones woven into his armor, addressed the prisoners. "You are now property of the Crimson Talon Syndicate. Your biological specifications will be evaluated. Useful specimens will be sold. Others will be processed for raw materials." He paused, his compound eyes settling on the group of humans. "Humans present particular value. Your species' resilience and adaptability make excellent workers for hazardous environments." Jake felt Zara tense beside him. Across the cargo bay, 2 other human passengers, a middle-aged couple who had been traveling to visit their daughter, clutched each other in terror. The 5th human, a young man who couldn't have been more than 20, was silently crying. "Processing will begin immediately," continued the Kithrak leader. "Specimens will be sorted by utility and species compatibility. Remember, cooperation extends operational lifespan." The pirates began moving among the prisoners, scanning them with handheld devices, and making notes on electronic tablets. When they reached Jake, the scanner beeped several times, and the Kithrak warrior examining him clicked excitedly to his companions. "This one shows unusual muscle density and bone strength," the pirate announced. "Stress response indicators suggest high pain tolerance. Marked for premium auction block." Jake bit back a sarcastic response. Even as a slave, apparently, his engineering background was going to work against him. The pirates would assume his technical knowledge made him valuable, which meant he'd probably end up in some hellish mining operation or weapons facility. The sorting continued for what felt like hours. The elderly and infirm were separated into one group. Jake tried not to think about what processing for raw materials meant. The younger, healthier prisoners were divided by species and apparent physical capabilities. As they worked, Jake noticed something odd. The Kithrak raiders kept glancing at their instruments and speaking in hushed tones. Several times, their leader consulted a large tablet, his antenna-like sensory organs twitching with what might have been nervousness. "Scanner sweep indicates unregistered vessel approaching," announced one of the pirates suddenly. "Configuration unknown. No response to hails." The leader's compound eyes clicked as they refocused. "Defensive positions. Continue processing operations." Through the cargo bay's small portholes, Jake glimpsed a new ship approaching. It was smaller than the raider vessel, maybe the size of a personal yacht, but its design was unlike anything he'd seen. The hull seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal, and no visible engines or weapon ports could be detected. "Unknown vessel, identify yourself," came a broadcast from the pirate ship. "This is a legitimate salvage operation. Under Crimson Talon authority, withdraw immediately or face destruction." The response came not through communication channels, but through the cargo bay's hull itself. Metal began to ripple in part like water, forming a perfect circular opening. A figure dropped through the gap with impossible grace, landing silently on the deck floor. Jake's first thought was that it had to be a child. The being stood barely a meter tall, but as his eyes adjusted to the strange shifting light that seemed to emanate from the newcomer's skin, he realized this was no child. She was humanoid in basic shape but clearly alien. Her skin had a silver mercury quality that reflected light in impossible ways, seeming to glow from within. Her hair, if it could be called that, flowed like liquid starlight, shifting between silver and deep violet. Her eyes were the most striking feature. Large and expressive, colored like amethysts and filled with an ancient intelligence that made Jake's breath catch. But it was her clothing and equipment that made the Kithrak raiders begin to back away in terror. She wore form-fitting armor that seemed to be grown rather than manufactured, with organic curves that suggested advanced biotechnology. At her side hung weapons that hurt to look at directly. Devices that seemed to bend light around them and whisper with barely contained energy. "Beksalia," whispered one of the Kithrak pirates, his translation device making his voice quaver with fear. "Death Singer." "We did not know this was your territory." The small alien woman, Vexalia, apparently, tilted her head slightly, studying the raiders with the same expression a scientist might use to examine an interesting but ultimately disposable specimen. "Territory is where I choose to stand," she replied, in perfect galactic standard, her voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in Jake's bones. "You have taken something that does not belong to you." The Kithrak leader tried to maintain his composure. "These are legitimate salvage claims. The transport vessel was disabled and—" His words cut off abruptly as Vexalia moved. Jake's engineer-trained eyes couldn't even follow the motion. One moment she was standing near the hull breach, the next she was directly in front of the pirate leader. One of her strange weapons was in her hand, its tip pressed against the Kithrak's throat. "I did not ask for explanations," she said calmly. "Release the prisoners. Immediately." The other pirates raised their weapons, but their leader quickly gestured for them to hold fire. Up close, Jake could see that Vexalia's weapon wasn't just advanced technology. It was actively rewriting the molecular structure of the air around it, creating patterns that hurt to perceive directly. "Death Singer, these are valuable specimens. The Syndicate has invested significant resources. Your investment is forfeit." Vexalia's free hand moved to another weapon, and the very air around her began to shimmer with deadly potential. "Choose quickly, release them and leave, or join your victims in whatever afterlife awaits vermin." For a moment, Jake thought the Kithrak might actually consider fighting. Then the pirate leader's compound eyes fixed on something behind Vexalia, and his entire body began to tremble. Floating through the hull breach came 3 more of her weapons, moving independently like living things. They positioned themselves at strategic points around the cargo bay, their forms shifting and adapting as they analyzed potential targets. "We will comply," stammered the Kithrak leader. "Release all prisoners. Withdraw to ship." The next few minutes passed in a blur of activity as the pirates hurriedly released their captives and began retreating to their vessel. Jake helped Zara to her feet, both of them watching in amazement as the small alien woman supervised the evacuation with the authority of someone accustomed to absolute obedience. "What about our ship?" asked the young human passenger, gesturing toward the disabled transport. Vexalia glanced at the Lucky Strike through the cargo bay's portholes. "Irreparable. My vessel will accommodate survivors." As she spoke, Jake felt the familiar sensation of a ship detaching from the hull. Through the porthole, he watched the Kithrak raider disappear into hyperspace, leaving only debris and the fading radiation signature of their jump drive. "Your timing was incredible," said Zara, approaching the alien woman carefully. "How did you know we were in trouble?" Vexalia's ancient eyes shifted to study the human engineer. "I was tracking these particular raiders. They have been operating in this sector for some time, taking prisoners for the slave markets. Your vessel's distress signal provided an opportunity to resolve the situation." Jake found himself stepping forward, his engineer's curiosity overcoming his caution. "Your ship? I've never seen technology like that. The way it interfaces with other vessels, the weapons that operate independently, it's incredible." For the first time, Vexalia's expression showed something other than cold efficiency. A small smile played across her features as she looked directly at Jake, and he felt something strange happen in his chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the cargo bay's environmental systems. "You have an engineer's eye," she observed. "Most species cannot even perceive the true nature of Centauri biotechnology, much less appreciate its elegance."
Centauri? Jake had never heard of the species, which was unusual.
His work on Kepler Station had exposed him to dozens of alien races and their technologies. "A very old people," Vexalia replied, but didn't elaborate. Instead, she gestured towards the hull breach. "Come, my vessel awaits. I will transport you to the nearest civilized system." As the survivors began moving toward the breach, Jake noticed that Vexalia seemed to be paying particular attention to him and the other humans. Her gaze lingered on them with an intensity that suggested more than casual interest. The interior of her ship defied every principle of design Jake had ever learned. Corridors curved and flowed like living arteries, walls pulsed with soft bioluminescent light, and the very air seemed to hum with contained energy. The other survivors clustered together nervously, but Jake found himself walking closer to their rescuer. "This ship," he said, running his hand along a wall that felt warm and slightly yielding. "It's alive, isn't it?" Vexalia nodded approvingly. "Very good. Yes, this vessel is a living organism, bred and trained for spaceflight. Centauri ships are not built. They are grown, educated, and partnered with. Incredible. The biological processes required, the integration of consciousness with mechanical systems. How do you maintain the neural pathways without degradation?"
And the power source. You ask excellent questions.
Vexalia interrupted, and Jake realized he'd been babbling with enthusiasm. Her smile had returned, warmer this time.
"It has been many cycles since I encountered a being capable of truly appreciating Centauri science." They reached what appeared to be the ship's common area, a large space with organically curved seating and viewing ports that provided a panoramic view of space. The other survivors settled themselves gratefully while Vexalia moved to what must have been the ship's control interface, a complex arrangement of living tissue and crystalline structures that responded to her touch. "Destination?" she asked the group. The survivors discussed their options in hushed tones. Most wanted to reach the nearest major hub where they could book passage to their original destinations. Jake found himself with nowhere particular to go. His job was gone, his savings depleted, and his future uncertain. "Nexus Station would be suitable for most of us," said the Talarian merchant, speaking for the group. "It's a major transit hub with connections throughout this sector." Vexalia nodded and began interfacing with her ship's systems. As she worked, Jake noticed that her movements had a peculiar rhythm, almost like a dance. The ship responded to each gesture, adjusting course and speed with fluid precision. 2 standard days to Nexus Station at current speeds," she announced. Then her eyes found Jake again. "You seem troubled, human engineer." Jake shrugged, trying to appear casual. "Just wondering what comes next, I guess. Not a lot of opportunities for unemployed maintenance workers in this part of the galaxy." "Perhaps," said Vexalia quietly, "your path lies in a direction you have not yet considered." Before Jake could ask what she meant, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Vexalia's expression shifted instantly from contemplative to deadly serious as she consulted her ship's sensors. "The Kithrak have returned," she announced grimly. 3 vessels this time, and they have brought friends. It appears they were unwilling to accept their losses. Through the viewing ports, Jake could see ships dropping out of hyperspace around them. Not just Kithrak raiders, but vessels from other pirate factions as well. They were surrounded. Why would they come back? Asked Zara nervously. They got away clean. Vexalia's ancient eyes gleamed with something that might have been anticipation. Because, she said, her voice carrying those same bone-deep harmonics Jake had noticed before, they believe superior numbers will allow them to claim both their original prizes and my ship as well. Her smile returned, but this time it was not warm or friendly. This was the expression of a predator who had just been offered the perfect opportunity to hunt. They are about to learn why the Centauri do not fear pack hunters. The enemy ships moved with predatory confidence, forming a loose sphere around Vexalia's vessel. Jake counted at least 7 distinct silhouettes against the starfield. 3 Kithrak raiders like the one that had attacked the Lucky Strike, 2 sleek vessels he didn't recognize, and a massive dreadnought that dwarfed all the others combined. Centauri vessel, you are surrounded, came a transmission in heavily accented galactic standard. Surrender immediately and your death will be swift. Continue resistance and we will take our time with both you and your passengers. Vexalia studied the tactical display with the calm attention of someone reading a shopping list. Her ship's biological systems pulsed with soft light, and Jake could feel a subtle vibration through the living walls, like the purring of some vast, contented predator. Fascinating, she murmured, her fingers dancing across the organic control surfaces. 7 ships, 43 distinct life signs, weapons ranging from crude kinetic projectiles to moderately advanced plasma arrays. She glanced at the huddled survivors. They appear to believe quantity compensates for quality. The young human passenger who had been crying earlier spoke up, his voice cracking with fear. Can't we just surrender? Maybe they'll let us live if... No. Vexalia cut him off gently but firmly. Kithrak Syndicate protocol requires elimination of all witnesses to failed operations. They cannot afford to let word spread that their forces can be defeated by a single opponent. Jake moved closer to the control area, his engineer's instincts overriding his common sense. What are our options? Your ship is advanced, but 7-to-1 odds. Vexalia's smile returned, and this time Jake noticed something he'd missed before. Her teeth were slightly pointed, like a predator's. You think in terms of conventional warfare, human engineer. Watch and learn why the galaxy once feared to wake the sleeping Centauri. She pressed her palm against a particularly complex cluster of organic controls, and the ship around them began to change. Walls that had seemed solid became translucent, revealing the complex internal structures beneath. Corridors shifted and flowed, creating new passages while sealing others. The very air seemed to thicken with potential energy. Battle configuration initiated, announced the ship itself in a voice like wind through crystal chimes. All systems at optimal efficiency, awaiting engagement protocols. Through the now transparent sections of hull, Jake could see structures emerging from the ship's surface. Not weapon ports or defensive arrays, but something that looked disturbingly organic. Tentacle-like appendages unfurled from hidden recesses, each one tipped with what appeared to be a smaller version of the weapons Vexalia carried. Symbiotic weapon systems, she explained, noticing his fascination. Each one possesses its own intelligence, its own tactical awareness. They do not merely fire projectiles, they hunt. The first enemy ship opened fire, sending a barrage of plasma bolts toward Vexalia's vessel. Jake instinctively braced for impact, but the organic weapons responded with fluid grace. Beams of energy that bent light itself lanced out to intercept the incoming fire, not just deflecting the shots but somehow absorbing their energy and converting it into fuel for the ship's systems. Impossible, breathed Zara, watching the display. You're using their own weapons against them. Energy is energy, Vexalia replied calmly. Crude plasma discharges can be refined into much more useful forms. The enemy ships spread out, trying to attack from multiple angles simultaneously. The massive dreadnought moved to a flanking position, while the smaller vessels darted in like wolves harrying a larger predator. Their coordination was impressive. Jake had to admit these weren't common pirates, but experienced military units. It didn't matter. Vexalia's ship moved through space like a living thing, twisting and flowing in ways that should have been impossible for any vessel. The organic weapon systems tracked targets independently, each one engaging different enemies with surgical precision. But it wasn't the technology that amazed Jake. It was the way Vexalia seemed to anticipate every enemy move, positioning her ship perfectly to counter each attack. How are you doing this, he asked, watching her hands move across the controls in that strange rhythmic dance. You're predicting their tactics before they execute them. Kithrak naval doctrine is based on hive mind principles, she replied. without taking her eyes off the tactical display. Their movements followed predictable patterns optimized for coordinated assault. I have studied their methods for many cycles. One of the unidentified ships broke formation, diving toward them on a kamikaze run. Its hull glowed with the telltale signs of an overloading reactor. They were trying to take Vexalia's ship with them in a suicide attack. Crude, Vexalia observed, but potentially effective against conventional vessels. Her ship's response was anything but conventional. One of the larger weapon appendages extended toward the approaching enemy, its tip opening like a flower to reveal something that hurt to look at directly. The space between the two ships began to fold. Jake watched in amazement as the enemy vessels simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, so much as edited out of reality. "What did you just do?" demanded the Tellurian merchant, his blue skin pale with shock. "Localized dimensional compression." Vexalia explained as casually as she might describe the weather. "The vessel now occupies a space approximately the size of a grain of sand. Quite efficient." The remaining enemy ships hesitated, their coordinated attack dissolving into confused maneuvering. Jake could imagine the panic on their bridges as they tried to understand what had just happened to their companion. "Unknown weapon type," came a frantic transmission from one of the Kithrak vessels. "Recommend immediate withdrawal." "Negative," replied another voice. The Dreadnought's captain, Jake guessed. "Deploy quantum mines." Force close engagement. Dozens of small objects ejected from the enemy ships, spreading out in a wide net around Vexalia's vessel. Each one glowed with barely contained energy. Quantum mines were among the most devastating weapons in known space, capable of tearing holes in reality itself. "Now that," said Vexalia with what sounded like genuine pleasure, "is interesting." Her ship began to sing. It started as a barely perceptible vibration, but grew into a complex harmonic that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of space itself. The quantum mines, designed to explode on proximity or remote command, began to respond to the alien melody. Their energy signatures fluctuated wildly as they tried to maintain stability against the Centauri ship's song. "Harmonic disruption," Jake whispered, finally understanding. "You're using sound waves to destabilize their quantum matrices."
Sound is merely organized vibration, Vexalia agreed.
"All matter responds to the proper frequency. The challenge is finding the correct notes." The mines began to detonate, but not as their creators intended. Instead of tearing holes in space, they released their energy in carefully orchestrated bursts that formed complex patterns around Vexalia's ship. The released quantum energy was absorbed by the vessel's organic systems, making the bioluminescent walls glow brighter, and causing new weapon appendages to emerge from previously smooth hull sections. "You're feeding on their weapons," Jake realized. "The more they attack you, the stronger you become." An accurate assessment. Centauri vessels are designed to thrive on conflict. We convert aggression into growth. The enemy fleet was now in full retreat, their formations shattered and their tactics proven useless. But Vexalia wasn't finished. Her ship moved with suddenly increased speed, pursuing the fleeing vessels with the fluid grace of a hunting predator. "Wait," called out Zara. "They're running. Isn't it enough to drive them off?" Vexalia paused in her pursuit, turning those ancient amethyst eyes toward the human engineer. "These are not mere pirates, human Zara. They are part of a larger organization that profits from slavery and suffering. If allowed to escape, they will simply find other victims." "But you're going to kill them all," said the young human passenger, his voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," Vexalia replied with no emotion whatsoever. "I am." The pursuit was brief and methodical. Vexalia's ship moved through the scattered enemy fleet like a surgeon's blade, each engagement lasting only seconds. The Kithrak raiders found their weapons completely ineffective, their armor useless against technology that could rewrite matter at the molecular level. The unidentified vessels tried to fight, then tried to flee, but neither option proved viable against an opponent who could fold space itself. The Dreadnought lasted longest, its massive shields and heavy armor providing some protection against the Centauri ship's exotic weapons. Its captain tried everything: ramming speed, nuclear self-destruct, even launching the ship's entire complement of fighters in a desperate final assault. Vexalia ended it with a single gesture, her hand moving across a control surface in a pattern that seemed almost artistic. The Dreadnought simply stopped. Its engines cut out, its weapons fell silent, and its life support systems shut down one by one. Through the viewing ports, Jake could see the massive vessel drifting dead in space. "The crew?" asked Zara quietly. "Unconscious," Vexalia replied. They will wake in approximately 6 standard hours, long enough for rescue vessels to arrive. They will remember nothing of their weapons or tactics, and their ship's computer systems will have been revised to prevent future criminal activity. Jake stared at her in amazement. You could have killed them all, but you chose mercy. I chose efficiency, Vexalia corrected. Dead pirates become martyrs, inspiring others to seek revenge. Reformed pirates become cautionary tales discouraging future aggression. As her ship returned to its normal configuration, the weapon appendages retracting and the walls becoming opaque again, Jake found himself studying their rescuer with new eyes. She had just single-handedly defeated an entire fleet of military vessels, demonstrating technology that bordered on magical, and yet she spoke of it as casually as discussing ship maintenance. "Who are you, really?" he asked quietly. "The Centauri, your people. Where do you come from?" Vexalia settled into what appeared to be her command chair, a living throne that molded itself to her small form. For a moment, her ancient eyes seemed to look through Jake to some distant memory. "The Centauri are old," she said finally. "Old when your species first learned to use fire. Old when the stars themselves were young. We have seen empires rise and fall, watched civilizations bloom and fade, observed the universe itself change and grow." She paused, her gaze returning to the present. "We were once numerous, spread across 1,000 worlds. We built wonders that made lesser species worship us as gods. We commanded forces that could remake reality on a whim." "What happened to them?" asked the Tellurian merchant. "If your people were so powerful, where are they now?" Vexalia's smile was tinged with sadness. "We transcended. Most of my people chose to leave this reality entirely, to explore dimensions beyond physical existence. I am among the last who chose to remain, to watch over the younger races as they find their own paths to greatness." Jake felt something stir in his chest. Not just attraction to this strange, powerful being, but a deeper recognition. "You're lonely," he realized. "I am selective in my companionship," Vexalia admitted. "Most species lack the capacity to truly understand Centauri perspective. They see our technology as magic, our achievements as impossibilities. They worship or they fear, but they do not comprehend." Her eyes found Jake's again, and he felt that strange warmth returning. "But occasionally, I encounter individuals with the potential for greater understanding, minds capable of growth beyond their species' typical limitations." Before Jake could respond, the ship's systems chimed softly. "Approaching Nexus Station," announced the vessel's crystalline voice. "Docking clearance requested and granted. Estimated arrival in 47 standard minutes." The other survivors began to stir, gathering their few possessions and discussing their plans for when they reached the station. Jake realized that in a few hours, he would probably never see Vexalia again. The thought bothered him more than it should have. "Thank you," said Zara, approaching the Centauri woman, "for everything. Without your intervention, no gratitude is necessary." Vexalia replied graciously. "I was merely correcting an imbalance." As the others prepared for their arrival at Nexus Station, Jake lingered near the control area. His mind was racing with questions about Centauri technology, about Vexalia's past, about the galaxy he was discovering beyond his limited human experience. "You have more questions," Vexalia observed. "Hundreds," Jake admitted. "Your ship's bio-neural interfaces, the dimensional manipulation systems, the harmonic resonance weapons. It's all incredible. And what you said about humans having potential... What did you mean?" Vexalia studied him for a long moment, and Jake had the unsettling feeling that she was evaluating him on levels he couldn't even comprehend. "Humans are unique," she said finally. "Most species follow predictable evolutionary paths. They develop technology, achieve spaceflight, encounter other races, and eventually find their niche in the galactic community. They become traders, or warriors, or scholars, or any of a dozen other archetypal roles." She paused, her expression becoming more intense. "Humans refuse to accept limitations. You adapt, improvise, overcome obstacles that stop other species entirely. Where others see impossibilities, humans see challenges. Where others accept defeat, humans find new approaches." "That doesn't sound particularly special," Jake said. "Lots of species are adaptable." "No," Vexalia replied firmly. "Adaptable implies changing to fit circumstances. Humans change circumstances to fit themselves. You remake reality through sheer determination and ingenuity. In all my cycles of existence, I have never encountered another species with that particular trait. Jake felt something click in his mind, a piece of a larger puzzle falling into place. That's why you helped us. Not just because you were tracking the pirates, but because we're human. Partially correct, Vexalia confirmed. But more specifically, I helped because you interest me, Engineer Jake Morrison. The way she said his name sent chills down his spine. You know who I am? I know your work history, your psychological profile, your genetic markers, and your potential for growth beyond baseline human norms. Her smile returned, more mysterious than ever. I have been observing for some time. Before Jake could process the implications of that statement, Nexus Station came into view through the ports. The massive structure sprawled across several kilometers of space, its countless docking bays and habitat rings glittering with the lights of 100 different species. Final approach initiated, announced the ship. Passengers should prepare for disembarkation. As Jake watched the station grow larger, he realized that his life had just reached another crossroads. He could step off the ship, disappear into the crowds of Nexus Station, and try to rebuild his mundane existence. Or Vexalia, he said quietly, not entirely sure what he was about to ask. She turned to look at him, those ancient eyes holding depths he was only beginning to understand.
Yes? Jake Morrison? What happens now?
Nexus Station sprawled before them like a metallic city floating in the void. Jake had seen pictures, but the reality was overwhelming. Millions of beings from hundreds of species living and working in a structure that defied every principle of engineering he thought he understood. Docking bays the size of small cities accommodated vessels ranging from single-person shuttles to massive cargo haulers. Transport tubes snaked between habitat rings like arteries carrying the lifeblood of galactic civilization. Vexalia's ship approached one of the smaller docking bays with fluid grace, the station's automated systems guiding them in. Jake noticed that several security vessels moved to escort them. Apparently, having an unknown alien vessel request docking clearance had attracted official attention. Standard procedure, Vexalia explained, noticing his concern. Nexus Station maintains strict security protocols. They will scan my ship, verify our credentials, and assign a diplomatic liaison. Will there be problems? Asked Zara nervously. I mean, after what happened with the pirates? None whatsoever. Nexus Station exists under treaty protections that recognize diplomatic immunity for registered species. The Centauri maintain observer status in most galactic governments. As the docking clamps engaged, Jake felt a familiar sensation of artificial gravity taking hold. The transition from the ship's biogenerated gravity field to the station's mechanical systems was jarring, like stepping from warm sunlight into air conditioning. Passengers may disembark, announced the ship. Docking fees have been paid, and temporary transit visas have been arranged for all aboard. The other survivors began filing toward the airlock, thanking Vexalia profusely as they prepared to leave. The Talarian merchant pressed a credit chip into her hand, insisting on paying for passage despite her protests. The middle-aged human couple embraced her carefully, tears streaming down their faces. Jake hung back, uncertain. Part of him wanted to follow the others, to lose himself in the crowds of Nexus Station and try to rebuild his life. But a larger part was fascinated by this mysterious alien woman who had casually demonstrated technology that bordered on miraculous. You hesitate? Vexalia observed as the last of the other passengers disappeared into the station's corridors. I don't have anywhere particular to go, Jake admitted. My job's gone, my savings are almost depleted, and I'm not sure what comes next. Vexalia studied him with those penetrating amethyst eyes. Perhaps that is why the universe arranged for our paths to cross. Before Jake could ask what she meant, the airlock chimed and 3 figures entered the ship. The first was clearly a Nexus Station security officer, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with 4 arms and the kind of polite but alert expression that Jake associated with competent law enforcement. The second was smaller, covered in what looked like metallic fur, and carried enough scanning equipment to outfit a small laboratory. The third figure made Jake's breath catch. It was human, but not quite. Taller than baseline by at least half a meter, with enhanced musculature visible even through civilian clothing, and eyes that held an alertness bordering on predatory. Genetic modifications, Jake realized. The kind of enhancements that turned ordinary humans into living weapons. Greetings, said the security officer, in accented but fluent galactic standard. I am Commander Thexvar of Nexus Station Security. This is Scanner Specialist Crixtal and Military Liaison Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran Colonial Authority. The enhanced human stepped forward, her modified eyes studying both Jake and Vexalia with professional interest. Miss Vexalia of the Centauri, their host replied graciously. Welcome aboard. I trust your scans have found everything satisfactory? Scanner specialist Crickstyle chittered excitedly, consulting readouts on multiple devices. Most unusual vessel. Biomechanical integration unprecedented. Technology classifications difficult to determine. Request permission for detailed analysis. Denied, Vexalia said simply. Centauri vessels are considered living beings under galactic treaty law.
Invasive scans would constitute assault. Captain Chen's enhanced features showed a flicker of frustration.
We're required to verify that no prohibited technologies or substances are aboard station facilities.
Your cooperation would be appreciated. My cooperation is given freely, Vexalia replied with that mysterious smile. But it is bounded by the rights of sentient life forms. Would you submit to invasive medical procedures simply because someone expressed curiosity about your enhanced physiology? The military liaison stiffened slightly.
I'm not sure what you mean. Your genetic modifications are quite impressive, Vexalia continued conversationally.
Enhanced reflexes, increased muscle density, improved neural processing speed.
Military-grade augmentations, I would estimate. Quite beyond baseline human norms. Jake noticed that Captain Chen's hand had moved unconsciously toward what was probably a concealed weapon. How could you possibly know that just by looking at me? Experience, Vexalia replied. I have encountered many enhanced humans over the cycles. Your kind are becoming increasingly common in this part of the galaxy. Commander Thexvar stepped between them diplomatically. Perhaps we could complete the standard documentation and allow Miss Beasis Vexalia to proceed with her business on the station, unless there are specific security concerns. Captain Chen studied Vexalia for another moment, then shook her head. No immediate concerns, but I'll need to file a report about unknown technology levels. Standard protocol. Of course, Vexalia agreed. I am registered for a 3-day stay while conducting private business. All fees have been paid and proper documentation submitted. As the officials completed their bureaucratic procedures, Jake found himself watching Captain Chen with professional curiosity. Her enhanced physiology was impressive, but more interesting was the way she carried herself, like someone accustomed to being the most dangerous person in any room. You're staring, she said quietly, moving to stand beside him while the others worked. Sorry. It's just, I worked on Kepler Station for 5 years and never met anyone with military enhancements. You're quite impressive. Captain Chen's expression softened slightly. Jake Morrison, right? I ran your ID when you came aboard. Former maintenance engineer, recently unemployed. What are your plans on Nexus? Honestly, I have no idea. Look for work, I guess. Try to figure out what comes next. Might want to be careful about the company you keep, Chen said, glancing meaningfully toward Vexalia. Unknown alien species with advanced technology and secretive agendas, it's not usually a good combination for baseline humans. Before Jake could respond, the officials finished their work and prepared to leave. Commander Thexvar handed Vexalia a small device that Jake recognized as a station access key. Level 7 Commercial Sector, the security officer explained. Standard visitor accommodations and market access. Please observe all posted regulations and contact security if you require assistance. Most kind, Vexalia replied. I anticipate a pleasant stay. As the officials left, Captain Chen paused at the airlock. Mr. Range. Morrison, if you need any assistance or guidance. While on the station, Terran Colonial Authority maintains an office in the government sector. Ask for me specifically. After they were gone, Jake found himself alone with Vexalia in the now quiet ship. The silence stretched for several moments before she spoke. Your Captain Chen is concerned about your welfare, she observed. She's not my captain, Jake replied. I've never seen her before today. But you're right, she seems worried about something. Enhanced humans often develop protective instincts regarding their baseline cousins, Vexalia explained. They see themselves as guardians against the dangers of galactic civilization. Jake studied her expression, looking for clues about what she wasn't saying. And am I in danger? Vexalia's ancient eyes held his for a long moment. That depends entirely on the choices you make in the next few hours. Before Jake could ask for clarification, She moved to the ship's control interface and began shutting down various systems. I have business to conduct on the station. You are welcome to accompany me, or you may pursue your own objectives. The choice is yours. Jake realized he was at another crossroads. He could leave now, find his way to the Terran Colonial Authority office, and probably secure passage back to human space. It would be safe, predictable, and ultimately boring. What kind of business? He asked. Vexalia's smile returned. I am meeting with certain individuals who possess information I require. Specifically, data regarding the location of artifacts from my people's ancient civilization. Archaeology? You're an archaeologist? Among other things, the Centauri left many wonders behind when they transcended this reality. Some of these artifacts contain knowledge that could benefit younger species, if placed in the proper hands. Others contain powers that could destroy entire star systems if misused. Jake felt his engineer's curiosity overriding his common sense once again.
And you're trying to collect them?
I am trying to prevent them from falling into the wrong hands, Vexalia corrected. There are forces in this galaxy that would use Centauri technology for conquest and destruction. My mission is to locate these artifacts before they do. That sounds dangerous. Extremely so. Vexalia finished with the ship's systems and turned to face him directly. Which brings me to a proposition I wish to make. Jake's heart rate increased slightly. What kind of proposition? Vexalia moved closer, and Jake caught a scent like ozone and starlight. When she spoke, her voice carried those same harmonic undertones that seemed to resonate in his bones. I am in need of a partner, she said quietly. Someone with the technical knowledge to understand Centauri artifacts, the ingenuity to solve complex problems, and the courage to face unknown dangers. Most importantly, I need someone I can trust completely. You barely know me, Jake protested. I know you better than you might think, Vexalia replied. I know you spent 3 years developing improved life support systems for deep space installations. I know you once manually repaired a critical reactor breach while exposed to lethal radiation, saving the lives of 600 station personnel. I know you have been passed over for promotion 17 times because your supervisors feared your innovations might expose their own incompetence. Jake stared at her in amazement. 2. How could you possibly know all that? I told you, I have been observing. Your species produces very few individuals with the combination of technical brilliance and moral character I require. You are quite rare. What exactly are you asking me to do? Vexalia moved even closer, close enough that Jake could see flecks of starlight in her amethyst eyes. I am asking you to join me on a quest that will take us to the far reaches of the galaxy. We will explore ancient ruins, solve puzzles left by beings who transcended mortality, and face enemies who would use ultimate power for ultimate destruction. She paused, studying his face. It will be dangerous beyond your current comprehension. You will see wonders that defy explanation and horrors that challenge sanity. You will be transformed by the experience, becoming something far beyond what you are now. Jake's mouth had gone dry. And if I refuse? Then you return to your ordinary life, find ordinary work, and live an ordinary existence until age claims you. There is no shame in such a choice. Most beings prefer safety to adventure. But as she spoke, Jake realized that safety was the last thing he wanted. His entire life had been a series of compromises, accepting limitations, settling for less than he was capable of achieving. Here was a chance to be part of something extraordinary. There's something else, he said slowly. Something you're not telling me. Vexalia's expression became more serious. Centauri culture includes certain traditions regarding partnership in dangerous endeavors. If you accept my proposition, it would involve more than simple professional collaboration.
What do you mean?
I mean, Vexalia said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper, that I am asking you to be my life bond partner. What humans might term marriage, though the concept encompasses far more than mere legal or romantic attachment. Jake felt the universe tilt around him. You're proposing to me? I am offering you the opportunity to become something unprecedented. A human Centauri bonded pair. Our species have never successfully achieved such a partnership before. The process would enhance your capabilities beyond current human limits, while allowing me to share certain aspects of my nature that have been isolated for far too long. The implications hit Jake like a physical blow. You're talking about genetic modification, changing me into something non-human. I'm talking about evolution, Vexalia corrected gently. About becoming the best possible version of yourself, enhanced and expanded but still fundamentally you. Jake's mind raced as he tried to process everything she was telling him. Marriage to an alien, genetic transformation, a quest across the galaxy for ancient artifacts of unimaginable power. It was completely insane. It was also the most appealing offer he'd ever received. "I need time to think about this," he said finally. "Of course. Take all the time you require. But know that others are already seeking the artifacts we must find. Delay increases the risk that they will fall into hostile hands." Vexalia moved to gather some equipment from storage compartments Jake hadn't noticed before. Devices that seemed to shift and flow like her ship's technology. "I will be conducting my business in the commercial sector. If you decide to accept my proposition, you will find me there. If not," she shrugged gracefully, "then I will remember you fondly and wish you well in whatever life you choose." As she prepared to leave the ship, Jake found himself studying her with new eyes. She was offering him everything he'd ever dreamed of: adventure, purpose, and advancement beyond his wildest imagination. But she was also asking him to abandon his humanity, to become something alien and unknown. "Vexalia," he called as she reached the airlock. She turned back, those ancient eyes holding depths of patience and understanding. "What happens if the bonding process goes wrong? What if we're not compatible?" Her smile was sad but warm. "Then you would die, and I would spend the rest of my existence mourning the loss of the only being who ever truly understood me." With that sobering thought, she was gone, leaving Jake alone with the most important decision of his life. Jake sat alone in Vexalia's ship for nearly an hour, staring at the organic walls that pulsed gently with bioluminescent light. The vessel seemed to sense his emotional state, adjusting the lighting and temperature to provide comfort, though whether that was programmed behavior or genuine empathy was impossible to determine. The magnitude of the decision before him was overwhelming. Accept Vexalia's proposition and embark on a galaxy-spanning adventure that would transform him into something beyond human. Decline and return to the mundane existence that had left him feeling empty and unfulfilled. Neither choice was simple, and both carried consequences he couldn't fully comprehend. Finally, he forced himself to leave the ship and explore Nexus Station. Maybe walking through the corridors would help clear his head, or at least provide some perspective on the choice he faced. The commercial sector was a revelation, a vast marketplace where beings from across the galaxy conducted business in hundreds of languages and currencies. Jake wandered through corridors lined with shops selling everything from exotic spices to quantum computers, marveling at the diversity of life forms that called this place home. He stopped at a small cafe run by a six-armed alien who brewed coffee-like beverages from beans grown on a dozen different worlds. The proprietor, whose species Jake didn't recognize, served him something that tasted like cinnamon and starlight, while chattering about recent market fluctuations in rare metals.
"You look troubled, human friend," observed the cafe owner, whose name was apparently Zixqual.
"Perhaps Zixqual can offer wisdom. Many beings come here seeking guidance." Jake sipped his alien coffee, considering how much to reveal. "I've been offered an opportunity. A big one. Life-changing. But it comes with significant risks." Zixqual nodded knowingly, four of his arms continuing to clean equipment while two gestured expressively. The eternal dilemma of safe path versus growth path. Zixqual has observed many such choices over 300 standard years. "What do you usually recommend?" Zixqual asks different question. "Which choice makes better story to tell grandchildren?" Safe path creates comfortable ending but boring narrative. Growth path creates interesting story, though ending uncertain. Before Jake could respond, he noticed a commotion at a nearby shop. Raised voices carried over the general marketplace chatter, and several aliens were backing away from what appeared to be an electronics vendor. Jake's curiosity overrode his caution, and he moved closer to investigate. Through the shop's transparent front panel, he could see Vexalia examining a device that looked like crystalline circuitry embedded in living tissue. Across from her stood three beings Jake didn't immediately recognize. Tall, pale humanoids with elongated skulls and eyes like black mirrors. Their clothing suggested wealth and status, but something about their bearing radiated menace. "The price is not negotiable," one of the pale beings was saying in galactic standard. 50,000 credits or the artifact returns to our vault." "Your asking price is unreasonable," Vexalia replied calmly. "The device is damaged and incomplete. 20,000 credits is a fair offer." "You mistake us for common merchants, Centauri," sneered another of the pale beings. "We are Vorthak. We do not negotiate with inferior species." Jake felt his engineer's instincts flare. The Vorthak had just made a serious mistake. He could see the change in Vexalia's posture, the way her small hands moved slightly closer to her weapons. "Inferior," she repeated softly, and Jake caught those familiar harmonic undertones in her voice. An interesting choice of words. The shop's owner, a nervous-looking reptilian being, had retreated behind his counter. Other customers had quietly disappeared, leaving only the confrontation participants in the suddenly too quiet space. The Vorthak Empire spanned 7 star systems, the first pale being continued arrogantly. "Our fleets patrol these trade routes. Perhaps the Centauri should consider the implications of refusing our generous offer." Vexalia's smile was sharp as broken glass. "Perhaps the Vorthak should research their history more thoroughly before making threats." She set the crystalline device back on the counter and turned to face the 3 aliens directly. Jake noticed that her stance had shifted subtly, balanced on the balls of her feet, weight distributed for instant movement. She was preparing for combat. "The last time the Vorthak Empire encountered Centauri forces," she said conversationally, "your homeworld required 3 centuries of terraforming to become habitable again. Would you care to repeat the experiment?" The lead Vorthak's black eyes narrowed. "Ancient history. The Centauri are extinct." "No," Vexalia corrected gently. "The Centauri are selective." That's when Jake noticed the other customers in nearby shops had all disappeared. Security systems throughout the commercial sector were activating, and he could hear the distant sound of blast doors sealing. Somehow, this confrontation was triggering station-wide emergency protocols. The Vorthak leader made a gesture to his companions, and Jake saw weapons appearing from concealed holsters. Military-grade energy weapons, the kind that could punch holes through armored hull plating. "Stand down immediately," came a booming voice over the sector's communication system. "This is Commander Thexvar of Nexus Station Security. All parties will submit to peaceful mediation." The Vorthak ignored the warning, raising their weapons toward Vexalia. Jake found himself moving before conscious thought engaged, his engineer's training kicking in as he analyzed the situation. 3 hostiles with energy weapons in an enclosed space, with innocent bystanders nearby. Even if Vexalia won the fight, the collateral damage could be catastrophic. He grabbed a portable scanner from a nearby shop counter and hurled it at the lead Vorthak's weapon, spoiling his aim just as the alien fired. The energy blast went wide, punching a hole in the shop's ceiling instead of Vexalia's torso. "Jake," Vexalia called out, and he heard genuine concern in her voice. The Vorthak spun toward him, fury twisting their pale features. "Human vermin, you dare interfere?" That's when Vexalia struck. Jake had seen her move during the pirate battle, but this was different. In space, she had been methodical, almost casual in her destruction of enemy forces. Here, surrounded by potential collateral damage, she moved with surgical precision. The first Vorthak never saw her coming. One moment he was turning his weapon toward Jake, the next he was unconscious on the shop floor, his weapon reduced to component atoms. The second attacker managed to fire once before Vexalia's return strike sent him crashing through the shop's rear wall. The third tried to retreat but found his path blocked by what appeared to be a wall of crystalline energy. The entire engagement lasted less than 10 seconds. Threat neutralized. Vexalia announced calmly as security forces flooded into the sector. Hostile actors are unconscious but alive. Medical attention may be required. Commander Thexvar arrived with a full tactical team, but found only Jake standing among the unconscious Vorthak while Vexalia examined the crystalline device that had started the confrontation. "What happened here?" demanded the security commander. "Attempted armed robbery," Jake replied, his hands still shaking from adrenaline. "They tried to force Vexalia to pay an inflated price, then drew weapons when she declined." The reptilian shop owner emerged from behind his counter, chittering excitedly in what might have been gratitude or terror. Scanner readings confirmed Jake's account. The Vorthak weapons showed recent discharge, and security recordings would undoubtedly support their version of events. "You intervened," Vexalia said quietly, studying Jake with those penetrating amethyst eyes. "Why?" "I don't know," Jake admitted. "I saw those weapons. Imagine the damage they could do in a crowded space like this. I just reacted. You risked your life for beings you barely know. I couldn't just stand there and watch people get hurt." Vexalia's expression was unreadable. "Even knowing that I was perfectly capable of handling the situation myself?" Jake considered the question seriously. "Would you have been able to stop all 3 without any collateral damage? in a space this confined with innocent bystanders nearby. Perhaps not, she admitted. Your intervention did minimize potential civilian casualties. As security forces processed the scene and took statements from witnesses, Captain Sarah Chen arrived with additional Terran Colonial Authority personnel. Her enhanced eyes took in the situation quickly, focusing on the unconscious Vorthak and the blast damage to the shop ceiling.
Mr. Morrison, she said, approaching Jake with professional concern. Are you injured?
I'm fine, Jake replied. Just a bit shaken up. Captain Chen studied the scene more carefully, her enhanced senses no doubt analyzing details Jake couldn't perceive.
3 armed attackers, military-grade weapons, minimal collateral damage. Someone with exceptional combat skills intervened.
Her gaze shifted to Vexalia, who was completing her purchase of the crystalline device from the grateful shop owner. Care to explain what really happened here?
Mr.
Morrison's account is accurate, Vexalia replied diplomatically. The Vorthak attempted to use intimidation and force to compel an unreasonable business transaction. When peaceful resolution failed, they resorted to violence. And you single-handedly defeated 3 armed hostiles without killing any of them, Captain Chen observed.
Impressive restraint. Violence should be proportionate to the threat, Vexalia agreed. Lethal force was unnecessary in this situation. Jake noticed that Captain Chen was studying him with increased intensity.
Mr. Morrison, might I have a word with you privately? They moved to a quiet corner of the commercial sector while Vexalia finished her business with security. Captain Chen's enhanced features were serious, almost concerned. That was either very brave or very foolish, she said bluntly. Interfering in a confrontation between unknown alien species could have gotten you killed. I couldn't just watch, Jake replied. There were innocent people nearby. Noble sentiment, but you're a baseline human engineer, not a combat specialist. What made you think you could make a difference? Jake considered the question. I didn't think about it. I just saw weapons, calculated the potential for collateral damage, and acted on instinct. Captain Chen nodded slowly. Protective instincts. Interesting. Tell me, what are your plans for the immediate future? I'm not sure yet, Jake answered honestly. I'm considering several options. Options that involve your alien friend? Jake glanced toward Vexalia, who was speaking with Commander Thixvar about the Vorthak's legal status. Maybe. She's offered me a position. Technical consultant for archaeological research. Archaeological research? Captain Chen repeated flatly. With technology that can disable armed hostiles without lethal force, and ships that can defeat entire pirate fleets. Right. You don't believe her? I believe she's not telling you everything, Captain Chen replied. Unknown alien species with advanced technology and mysterious agendas rarely have simple explanations. If you're thinking of leaving Nexus Station with her, I'd recommend extreme caution. Before Jake could respond, Vexalia approached them. Her small form moved with that same fluid grace Jake had observed during combat, and he noticed that Captain Chen automatically shifted into a more defensive stance. The situation has been resolved, Vexalia announced. The Vorthak will face charges for assault and attempted extortion. Station security has been most cooperative. I'm sure they have, Captain Chen said dryly. Ms. Vexalia, are you planning an extended stay on Nexus Station? That depends on several factors still under consideration, Vexalia replied diplomatically. Her ancient eyes found Jake's. Have you reached a decision regarding our earlier conversation? Jake felt both women watching him intently, waiting for his answer to a question he still wasn't sure how to resolve. The confrontation with the Vorthak had demonstrated both Vexalia's capabilities and the dangers that surrounded her. Associating with her would mean entering a world where armed conflict was apparently routine, where ancient alien artifacts commanded prices that could bankrupt small governments, where beings casually threatened to destroy star systems. It would also mean adventure, purpose, and the chance to explore technology that could revolutionize his understanding of the universe.
I have some questions first, Jake said finally. About the artifacts you're seeking. About the dangers we'd face. About what exactly this partnership would involve. Vexalia smiled, and Jake caught a glimpse of genuine warmth beneath her ancient composure.
Excellent. Rational inquiry before commitment demonstrates wisdom. Shall we discuss these matters in more comfortable surroundings? Captain Chen stepped forward slightly. Mr. Morrison, remember that the Terran Colonial Authority is available if you need assistance or advice. Our office is in Government Sector 7. Thank you, Jake replied. I'll keep that in mind. As they prepared to leave the commercial sector, Jake realized he had already made his choice.
The confrontation with the Vorthak had shown him something important. He couldn't return to a mundane existence after experiencing the wider galaxy. Whether he accepted Vexalia's proposition or found some other path forward, his old life was over. The question now was, what would replace it? "Where did you want to have this conversation?" he asked Vexalia. Her smile became mysterious again. "Somewhere private, where we can speak freely without concern for surveillance or interruption. I've acquired temporary quarters in the residential sector." As they walked through Nexus Station's corridors, Jake noticed that other beings gave them a wide berth. Word of the confrontation had already spread through the station's gossip networks, and apparently, few species wanted to risk association with whatever forces Vexalia represented.
"Does this happen often?" he asked quietly. "Armed confrontations over archaeological artifacts?" "More often than I would prefer," Vexalia admitted.
Centauri technology is highly valued by collectors and governments alike. Some are willing to use violence to obtain it. And the Vorthak? They seem to recognize your species. The Vorthak have long memories and longer grudges.
Our peoples have history. They reached a lift that would take them to the residential levels. As the doors closed, Jake found himself alone with Vexalia in a small enclosed space, acutely aware of her alien presence and the decision that awaited him.
"Jake Morrison," she said softly, her voice carrying those harmonic undertones that seemed to resonate in his soul. "Are you prepared to hear what I truly offer and what it will cost?" Jake took a deep breath, knowing that whatever she told him next would determine the course of his entire future.
"Yes," he said.
"Tell me everything." Vexalia's temporary quarters were unlike anything Jake had ever seen aboard a space station. The walls seemed to breathe with the same organic quality as her ship, and furniture that appeared grown rather than manufactured adapted to their bodies as they sat. Soft bioluminescent panels provided lighting that somehow made Jake feel more alert and focused. "This is Centauri technology too, isn't it?" he asked, running his hand along an armrest that felt warm and slightly yielding. "Portable bioarchitectural systems," Vexalia confirmed. "We have little tolerance for the sterile environments most species prefer. This provides a more comfortable atmosphere for sensitive discussions." She moved to what appeared to be a control node embedded in one wall, her fingers dancing across its surface in that familiar rhythmic pattern. The room's ambient lighting shifted subtly, and Jake felt a strange tingling sensation, as if the very air had become charged with potential. "Privacy shields," she explained. "Our conversation is now completely secure from external surveillance." Jake settled into a chair that molded itself to support him perfectly. "All right. You promised to tell me everything. I'm listening." Vexalia took a seat across from him, her small form somehow radiating a presence that filled the entire room. When she spoke, her voice carried new depths, harmonics that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his consciousness. "The artifacts I seek are not mere archaeological curiosities," she began. "They are fragments of a device my people created in the final days before our transcendence. We called it the synthesist engine, a construct capable of rewriting the fundamental laws of reality within localized space." Jake felt his engineer's mind struggling to comprehend the implications. "You're talking about changing physics itself? That's impossible." "By current understanding, yes. But the Centauri achieved many impossibilities. The engine was designed to facilitate our transition to higher dimensional existence, but its power proved excessive. We were forced to dismantle it before the transition, scattering its components across the galaxy to prevent misuse. And now someone is trying to reassemble it?" Vexalia's expression grew dark. "Several organizations are seeking the components. The Vorthak Empire believes the engine could make them invincible in warfare. The Zenthari Collective wants to use it to expand their hive mind across entire star systems. Worse entities exist in the dark spaces between stars, ancient things that hunger for the power to remake reality according to their alien desires." Jake leaned forward, fascination overriding his caution. "How many components are there? How much of the engine has been recovered?" 17 primary nodes, each containing aspects of the total design. I have secured 6. The Vorthak possess 3, the Zenthari have claimed 2, and the remaining 6 are scattered among various private collectors and governments. The crystalline device I purchased today contains navigational data that may lead to the 7th. What happens if someone actually manages to collect all the components? Vexalia's ancient eyes held depths of knowledge that Jake found simultaneously fascinating and terrifying. Local reality becomes malleable. Gravity can be reversed or eliminated. Time can flow backward or stop entirely. Matter can be transformed into energy and back again at will. Within the engine's operational radius, the controller becomes functionally omnipotent.
And the operational radius? Theoretically unlimited, given sufficient power input. A fully assembled synthesis engine could rewrite the laws of physics for an entire galaxy.
Jake sat back in his chair, mind reeling. That's godlike power.
No wonder everyone wants it. Indeed.
Which is why I cannot allow it to fall into the wrong hands. Vexalia leaned forward, her intensity making the air around them seem to shimmer. This is the task I offer you, Jake Morrison. Help me recover the remaining components before others can assemble the engine for destructive purposes. And in exchange, you're offering to marry me and transform me into something beyond human. I am offering to share the life bond that will allow us to function as a unified entity. The process would grant you capabilities approaching my own. Extended lifespan, enhanced physical and mental capacity, intuitive understanding of Centauri technology.
Jake studied her carefully. What aren't you telling me?
There's something else, something that makes this partnership necessary for you specifically. Vexalia was quiet for a long moment, and Jake caught a glimpse of something unexpected in her expression. Vulnerability. Centauri consciousness is layered, she said finally. We exist simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. Maintaining coherence across these layers requires enormous mental discipline, especially when separated from others of our kind. Over the cycles, the isolation has been difficult. You're lonely, Jake realized.
Not just socially, but existentially. Being the only Centauri in normal space is driving you insane. A crude but essentially accurate assessment.
The human capacity for bonding, for true empathic connection, offers the possibility of stabilization. With a properly prepared partner, I could share the burden of multidimensional existence while granting them access to capabilities beyond their species' normal limitations. Has this been tried before? Human-Centauri bonding? Vexalia shook her head. Never successfully. Previous attempts with